Richard was 30 years old when he became King of England. In the years before that, he'd grown up in the heat of the Wars of the Roses during some of the worst years. He spent 2 periods in exile when he was 8 and again when he was 18.
More than 5 centuries after 2 royal boys vanished behind the cold stone walls of the Tower of London. A quiet university professor may have just uncovered the clue that could expose England's most infamous king. Hidden in a long-forgotten document, the finding points to a secret that connects directly to the fate of the young princes and perhaps to the hand that silenced them. It is the kind of discovery historians dream of and monarchists fear. For generations, Richard's defenders have fought to clear his name. But this new evidence, buried for half a millennium, might change everything we thought we knew about the princes in the Tower. If Professor Tim Thornton is right, the truth about England's most chilling royal mystery has been hiding in plain sight all along, and what he uncovered will leave you stunned. This is the actual truth, the enduring mystery. In the spring of 1483, England was still settling into a fragile peace after decades of conflict known as the Wars of the Roses. The kingdom had endured years of bloodshed between 2 rival branches of the royal family, the houses of Lancaster and York. On April 9th of that year, King Edward IV died unexpectedly at the age of 40. His passing left the throne to his 12-year-old son, Edward, Prince of Wales. The boy, bright and well-mannered, had been carefully raised to rule. His younger brother, Richard, Duke of York, just 9 years old, stood next in the line of succession. Both were the sons of Edward IV and Elizabeth Woodville, whose marriage had brought both unity and controversy to the English court. Edward V was at Lello Castle in the Welsh Marches when news reached him that his father was dead. Preparations were made for his journey to London, where his coronation would take place. The boy was accompanied by his uncle on his mother's side, Earl Rivers, and a small escort loyal to the Woodville family. In the capital, however, political forces were already gathering. The king's younger brother, Richard, Duke of Gloucester, had been named Lord Protector in Edward IV's will. It was his duty to guide and defend the new king until he came of age. Richard of Gloucester met his nephew's party on the road to London in late April. Accounts differ as to what happened next. Some chroniclers suggest Richard was courteous but firm, insisting that the young king should travel under his supervision. Others hint at tension and unease. What is certain is that the Protector took Edward into his custody, dismissing many of the Woodville retainers and arresting Earl Rivers and several others. The boy continued on toward London, but under the firm control of his uncle. By May, Edward was installed in the Tower of London. To later generations, this would appear ominous, but at the time, it was not considered unusual. The Tower was still a royal residence and had often housed kings before their coronations. Richard of Gloucester maintained that this was a matter of custom and safety. Plans for the coronation continued, though with growing delays. Meanwhile, Queen Elizabeth Woodville, alarmed by her brother's arrest and the shifting power dynamics, sought sanctuary at Westminster Abbey, taking her younger son, the Duke of York, with her. Over the next few weeks, Richard's position strengthened. He began questioning the legitimacy of his brother's marriage to Elizabeth Woodville. The claim, once whispered, now gained legal weight. Clergymen declared that Edward IV had been pre-contracted to another woman before marrying Elizabeth, rendering the union invalid. If the marriage was unlawful, then its children were illegitimate and unfit to inherit the crown. The argument spread quickly, changing the tone of court politics. In early June, Richard persuaded Elizabeth Woodville to release her younger son from sanctuary so that he could join his brother at the Tower. The Queen, under pressure and perhaps believing it was for his safety, agreed. Both princes were now under Richard's watch. The coronation, once scheduled for June, was postponed indefinitely. On June 25, Parliament formally declared Edward IV's marriage invalid. The next day, Richard of Gloucester was proclaimed King Richard III. The transition of power was swift and absolute. Publicly, the new king presented himself as the rightful heir, restoring order and legitimacy to the realm. Privately, however, rumors had begun to swirl. At first, the princes were still seen occasionally. Visitors to the tower reported glimpses of the boys playing in the gardens or looking from the windows. Chroniclers recorded these sightings with cautious optimism, suggesting that the children remained safe. But as the summer advanced, those sightings grew fewer. Eventually, they ceased altogether. By late August, no one outside the tower claimed to have seen the princes again. The silence that followed was heavy and unsettling. No official statement was made about their whereabouts. No court announcement acknowledged their removal or transfer. The royal household records, so often filled with details of clothing, tutors, and attendants, suddenly stopped mentioning them. Their mother, still in sanctuary, waited for word that never came. Those close to the royal court began to whisper. Some said the princes had been moved secretly to another residence. Others believed they had fallen ill or been sent abroad for their protection. Yet, many suspected something darker. Even at the time, there were quiet suggestions that the boys had been deliberately silenced to secure Richard's hold on the throne. By the autumn of 1483, the truth was already obscured. Official documents spoke of stability under the new king, while others avoided the topic entirely. Foreign ambassadors in England began reporting conflicting stories to their rulers in France and Burgundy. Some letters described the princes as dead. Others claimed they had simply vanished. What can be stated with certainty is that after the summer of 1483, the two sons of Edward IV were never seen alive again. Their rooms in the tower were later reassigned, their attendants dispersed, and their possessions absorbed into royal inventories or lost entirely. Their disappearance was not marked by ceremony or public mourning. It passed quietly, almost invisibly, yet it would echo through English history for centuries to come. Rumors, speculations, and suspects. When the princes vanished from sight, England was left with a silence that echoed through the halls of power. The absence of any official statement, confession, or funeral only deepened the unease. In the years immediately following 1483, whispers began to fill the void where facts were missing. These whispers grew into theories, and theories hardened into accusations. At the center of almost every account stood the same figure, King Richard III. Richard's sudden rise to power had been swift and controversial. After declaring his nephews illegitimate, he was crowned in July 1483. Yet, even as the crown settled upon his head, the question of the boys lingered. People asked what had become of the rightful heirs. Contemporary sources hint that the mood in London shifted as rumors of the princes' deaths began to circulate. Chroniclers of the time, including Dominic Mancini, an Italian visitor to England, recorded that people wept in secret, fearing that the princes were already dead. Mancini wrote that the young Edward, confined in the tower, believed his death was near, and sought comfort in daily confession and prayer. If the princes truly were murdered, who could have done it? The theory that Richard himself ordered their deaths has long been the most enduring. It rests on both motive and opportunity. As king, Richard gained the throne only through the removal of his nephews. The Tower of London was under his control, and his loyal servants managed its daily affairs. Those who believe in Richard's guilt argue that the boys posed an existential threat. As long as they lived, Richard's claim to the crown remained vulnerable. A single rebellion proclaiming Edward V as the rightful king could undo everything he had fought for. However, not everyone accepted that conclusion. From the Tudor period onward, debate has surrounded every aspect of the case. Sir Thomas More, writing some 30 years later, produced one of the most detailed accounts of the alleged murders. According to More, Richard III gave secret orders to one of his closest confidants, Sir James Tyrrell, to arrange the deaths of the princes. Tyr in turn delegated the task to two men, Miles Forrest and John Donne. They allegedly smothered the boys as they slept and buried them at the foot of the stairs within the tower. More's story ends with Richard ordering their remains moved elsewhere to prevent discovery. Yet More's version is far from uncontested. He wrote during the reign of Henry VIII at a time when Richard's image had already been blackened by Tudor propaganda. Critics have long argued that his account was a work of political theatre intended to justify the Tudor claim to the throne by portraying Richard as a villainous usurper. Still, More's account gained wide circulation and deeply influenced later histories, including Shakespeare's Richard III, which cemented the image of the hunchback tyrant haunted by the ghosts of murdered children. Other explanations emerged over the centuries. Some claimed that the boys had survived. One story suggested that they were secretly spirited out of the tower and raised in anonymity. Another theory proposed that one of them, perhaps Richard of York, grew up to become Perkin Warbeck, the pretender who claimed the throne during Henry VII's reign. While romantic, these theories struggle against the lack of supporting evidence. Each new generation has revisited the question, hoping for proof that never quite arrives. In 1674, workmen repairing a staircase in the tower discovered a wooden chest containing 2 small skeletons. Many believed they had found the remains of the princes. King Charles II ordered the bones placed in an urn and rearied in Westminster Abbey. But the mystery did not end there. The bones were examined briefly in 1933 and again much later, though never subjected to full DNA analysis. Without modern testing, their identity remains uncertain. The remains could belong to the princes, or they could belong to others who perished within the tower's long and violent history. The list of possible perpetrators has also grown with time. Some have pointed to Henry Stafford, Duke of Buckingham, a powerful ally who turned against Richard and was later executed for rebellion. Buckingham had his own ambitions and may have sought to eliminate the princes to pave his own path to power. Others have suggested that Henry VIII, the first Tudor king, might have ordered the deaths after defeating Richard at Bosworth in 1485, fearing that the boys, if alive, could challenge his new regime. But if Henry were responsible, why would he not have displayed the bodies to discredit Richard's reign once and for all? This uncertainty, this endless balancing of motives and opportunities, has kept the mystery alive. Every claim seems to open another question. The truth is buried beneath layers of politics, propaganda, and the passage of time. What remains clear is that the disappearance of the princes was not merely a private tragedy, but a turning point in English history. It transformed perceptions of monarchy, justice, and legitimacy. By the dawn of the 16th century, the princes had become symbols of innocence betrayed, of ambition unchecked, and of the murky depths of power. Yet behind all the speculation lies the simplest, most haunting truth. 2 children vanished, and no one could say for certain what became of them. And so the legend grew, feeding on doubt and silence, until even historians struggled to separate fact from fable. What remains unresolved is how society should interpret these findings. Should they,